Welcome back. You're watching Politically Correct on TVC. My name is Leangare. Today's debate is quite heated up. You know, in this studio, we are really highlighting issues that are pertaining the NYS scandal. We are trying to get answers on who's telling the truth. And of course, remember, you can send in your views and comments with regard to today's topic and what we touch on today. And you can send them through 0774 455 111. That's 0774 455 111. Of course, with us, again, I'll introduce my guest. His name is Jared Sala, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya.
Thank you, Leo.
Now, Jared, before we took a short break, you were telling us about Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen and Honorable Aden Duale, you know, how they've come out strongly and said, we don't know anything about exchange of money. You know, they're denying the allegations that have been pitted against them. So I think we were looking into that and seeing perhaps who's telling the truth, where does the truth lie?
Well, it's correct to say that the two of them have come out to strongly deny any link to the NYS scandal. But if you look at their colleagues and even their peers in Parliament and elsewhere, you'd realize that there could be a link between these two leaders and the matters NYS. For instance, Kapseret MP, Honorable Oscar Sudi, has come out on record to say that when the NYS issue came to the fore and the parliamentary committee was discussing it, Honorable Senator Murkomen is the one who personally called him and asked him to remove his signature from the petition to have Waiguru ousted from office. And at the time, Honorable Sudi says he did not understand why Senator Murkomen was so passionate to the extent of following up individual MPs and telling them not to follow up, to remove their signatures basically from the Waiguru petition. And eventually you realize that the petition failed after many MPs from the URP wing withdrew their signatures. So in as much as Senator Murkomen would deny any links, this coupled together with the fact that he admits visiting the office of the NYS director points to the fact that where there is smoke, there could be fire.
Indeed. Now, the question is, do you think that they actually knew that the Jubilee Coalition knows everything in regard to the NYS fraud? Because we saw the State House spokesman, Manoa Esipisu, also come out previously to defend Anne Waiguru. Do you think the Jubilee Coalition actually knows something that we do not know about the NYS fraud?
I believe that the Jubilee administration, yes, knows much more than what is in the public limelight. You remember that at the time when the State House spokesperson, Manoa Esipisu, came out in defense of Waiguru, that was the first time since Kenya achieved independence for State House to come out and protect a cabinet minister on matters involving allegations of corruption. It's the very first time. Jomo Kenyatta never did it. Even Daniel Arap Moi, with all the corruption scandals in the Kanu regime, State House has never come out to defend any cabinet minister facing corruption allegations. It was the first time. And the questions Kenyans were asking at the point is, why is this happening for the first time? Is it because Anne Waiguru is enjoying relatively closer relations with the powers that be in terms of political connection? Because rumors had already been going around that Anne Waiguru is being referred to as a super cabinet minister because she has the ear of the president as well as the top leadership of the Jubilee administration.
Yeah.
So it was indeed a surprise, and it only points to the fact that yes, indeed, the Jubilee administration, all the way to State House, must have felt that this NYS scandal is a sensitive issue, and they will do their best to ensure that the Jubilee administration is not tainted by this scandal.
All right, so we've seen State House defend Waiguru. Now we're seeing that the Jubilee Coalition is sort of distancing itself from the NYS fraud case. Would you say there's double speak? What exactly is going on? Is there now a division or a rift that is emerging amongst the Jubilee coalition leaders?
There is indeed a rift. On the one hand, we have the leaders who have been implicated or mentioned as suspects or persons of interest, if you may, in the NYS matter, and who would not like to go down individually. So they will say, we are being targeted because we are leaders of URP. That's what Senator Murkomen and Honorable Duale have done. But on the other hand, the vast majority of Jubilee leaders, of course, have not been mentioned in the NYS scandal. And they realize that due to the magnitude and the far-reaching consequences that this issue might bring up, it is putting the Jubilee government at risk with the elections only 18 months away. Of note is the fact that with the history of corruption in Kenya, we are used to hearing of billions being stolen from parastatals and from various ministries. The amount that appears to have been misappropriated from NYS is 791 million. So even if the NYS scandal turns out to be true, it will not feature anywhere among the top 10 or 20 scandals we've had since independence. The only reason why it's receiving the national limelight is because of the stature of the persons involved, and in particular Anne Waiguru, who has occupied a pivotal role in the Jubilee administration.
Would you say Kenya is now becoming a corrupt nation? We also saw the Nairobi governor, Evans Kidero, just the other day. There are allegations that he may have paid money to Justice Philip Tunoi so that he could rule in favor of him with regard to the petition that was submitted by Ferdinand Waititu. Are we looking at Kenya becoming so corrupt? Because corruption is not only on the side of the Jubilee coalition, it's also coming out from the CORD party side. What's your take about that?
Well, it is no longer a secret. And I think various credible international agencies have already ranked Kenya as among the most corrupt countries in the world. If you look at the 2014 to 2015 bribery index corruption index by Transparency International, Kenya is now at position 3 in the world. We are now ranked as being more corrupt than Nigeria, than Bangladesh, than Zimbabwe, Central African Republic, all these pariah states that have been shunned by the international community. And no less than the president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, has given an address to his countrymen, telling them not to be as corrupt as Kenyans. That only shows how low we have sunk on matters corruption. What
are the implications we have as a country, we may be facing as a country on the international scene? Because also yesterday we saw Samuel Gishuru, Chris Okemo, their case of being involved in corruption. What do you think all these cases are doing to us in terms of the kind of a reputation we have on the international scene?
Well, of course, but once we are perceived to be a corrupt country, that will dampen the investment climate in the country in the long term. Because no international investor would want to put their money in a country where they hear a judge is being bribed or a parastatal is dishing out tenders corruptly or inflating the figures to benefit politicians. Nobody would want to invest in such a climate. And that's why if you look at the ranking of investment destinations in Africa, the countries that are relatively corrupt-free or perceived to be less corrupt, like Rwanda, Botswana, Angola, and others, are now being perceived as more attractive investment destinations as compared to Kenya.
So are we looking at the country being really affected in terms of investors coming into the country to invest?
No, I would not say so. For the simple reason that as much as Kenya is ranked as the third most corrupt nation on earth, we still have many factors going for us. We have tremendous infrastructural growth. We have amongst the most educated labor forces in the world. We have tourism and wildlife, mining, a lot of agriculture and export activities. So you still see a good number of investors putting their money and still having confidence in the Kenyan economy.
Let's go back to former CS Devolution, Anwar Guru. She wants to run for governorship come 2017. What's your take?
Well,
do you think, being involved now, as we're seeing, she's been linked to corruption, do you think as Kenyans we need to be a little bit more objective when we are electing leaders?
that will sound like the ideal situation. However, it does not work for the Kenyan political scene. We have seen from 1963 to date numerous politicians vying for office and being elected when they're perceived to be having engaged in criminal activity or they're suspects before courts of law. Even if you look at the current country's top leadership, both the president and deputy president were elected into office while facing charges of crimes against humanity. So I would not say that Kenyans objectively perceive leaders at election time and shun those leaders who appear to be corrupt. In fact, on the converse side, a lot of corrupt individuals are elected as leaders.
So where is the problem? What would you say to Kenyans? There's a Kenyan watching right now. What can you say to the Kenyans in regards to electing leaders? Because it sort of appears now we are also to blame, because we elect these people into parliament, and now they become our leaders, and now we are seeing what they're doing and how they are conducting themselves as our leaders. What would you say Kenyans need to do differently?
Well, the leaders we elect are basically a mirror image of the society that we are. And it is paramount that Kenyans begin to reevaluate themselves and elect into office persons based on their integrity and what these persons are capable of achieving once elected into office. Because the problem we've had for the last half a century is we elect people based on how much money they have or how popular they are in their home areas, as opposed to their ability to deliver.
All right, let's look at Samuel Gishuru and Chris Okemo. They're facing counts related to corruption. What do you perceive of their cases in reflection to the issue of corruption in our country?
I would say that the Samuel Gishuru and Chris Okemo case is a classic case of individuals being perceived as acquiring money corruptly and then stashing it in foreign countries. In this instance, they are alleged to have stashed money in foreign accounts in Jersey Islands, of course, in accounts held by shadowy companies. But Interpol and various organizations have been able to trace this money. Now, for the last few years, these two individuals have been fighting a battle in Kenyan courts to prevent their extradition so that they do not face charges in courts outside Kenya. But under international law, and Kenyan courts have so far agreed, there is a high likelihood that they will there's a possibility that they will be extradited and they will face charges outside the country.
All right. Now, we'll just go back to especially Anwar Guru. I think we need to go back to that. She wants to run for governorship for Nairobi. Do you think she should run, especially after what has happened with the NYS fraud case?
Well, as I said earlier, any individual before a court of law is innocent until proven guilty. Anwar Guru is yet to be charged in any court of law, not even on account of abuse of office, despite her having left office on allegations of corruption. Of course, she talked about her health condition as the reason. As to whether it would be prudent for her to vie for governorship, the ideal situation would be that if I were her, I would hold on, go through the due process first and be cleared, and then come out strongly to now say I'm clean, ready, and willing to serve the people of Nairobi. But until that happens, she will be carrying this tag of being a corrupt person, although she's yet to be proved to be so, and it will go all the way to the ballot box. And of course, her opponents will have a field day talking about that during the campaigns.
All right, we'll go now to voter registration. Still on matters corruption. Yesterday, we saw the opposition coming out and saying, there's something wrong that is going on with voter registration in the country. We saw also people who are interviewed, and they were saying that, you know, I appear to have been registered in a certain locality which I was not in at the time. I do not understand how I am registered as having voted already, or rather registered. So what exactly is happening with voter registration in the country?
Well, these are allegations that have come to the fore over the last few days. And the IEBC CEO, Mr. Ezra Chiloba, has come out to defend his organization. But some of his officers, particularly those in Nairobi, have admitted that indeed there is some corrupt influence when it comes to influencing voter registration patterns. For instance, one of the IEBC coordinators in Nairobi has said that it appears that there are politicians from counties neighboring Nairobi to transfer some voters to specific constituencies in Nairobi, Mathare, Ruaraka, and others, in order to influence the 2017 gubernatorial race. There have also been allegations in the media and elsewhere, raised by CORD, that recruits to the National Youth Service, the very same NYS again, when they were being registered to join NYS, their fingerprints and biometric details were used to register them as voters without their knowledge. This, again, the IEBC has denied. But I think the IEBC needs to take an approach of delving into these issues and investigating them comprehensively. Because if you recall, these are the issues that took this country to the brink of disaster after the 2007 election, when there were claims of dead voters in the register and voters in excess of the population of some regions.
Can we say that this is something that will continue happening? Because we are seeing people, citizens, personally coming out and saying, I have been registered in a certain locality, but I did not go there personally. The IEBC is saying none of that has happened. The opposition is saying there are cases that have come out. And there is actually evidence of people who have come out and said, you know, we were registered in a certain place, and I do not remember being there. What can we say about the IEBC at this case? Is it another EACC case where they are also losing credibility?
Well, I would not say that the IEBC has lost credibility as at this particular time in history, because the polls that they've conducted after the 2013 general election, all these by-elections that we've not had claims of bias by the IEBC. However, that being the case, they need to take very, very seriously the aspect of voter registration, because it could easily make or break the country. Because if we head into the 2017 general elections with either the Jubilee side or the CORD side or even any third player believing that there are some voters who are on the register and they're not supposed to be there, or two, there are voters who have been registered in polling stations where they cannot vote, then that would easily dent the credibility of the next elections.
Now, that brings me to the question, you know, with all these corruption cases from the Eurobond now to the NYS scandal, do you think, as according to what the opposition has been saying, that the Jubilee coalition is trying to get funds for its 2017 campaigns? Do you think this is the case?
Well, money is the oil that keeps politics going. That is true the world over. However, I would be hesitant to state that, for instance, money from NYS is being used to finance the next general election. Because if you look even at the affidavits filed in court by Josephine, Kabura, and others, this 791 million appears to have been shared out by so many people, and the EACC has already traced where these funds have gone to. Somebody you know buying a Range Rover for 25 million, another one buying an SUV for 6 million, another one buying a house for 123 million. So this money actually just ended up being pocketed by individuals for their own use, apparently. However, it would not surprise me if some bigger corruption scandals that have been mentioned in the country, we had claims by Alfred Keter about the SGR railway, you know, having its costs greatly inflated, and so on and so forth. Such monies could easily end up in the pockets of politicians to finance the next election.
So are we saying that Jubilee coalition, are you agreeing? Well, what's your opinion about this? Do you think they're trying to raise funds for the 2017 elections through all these fraud cases that we have had in the country?
I would say that it's not the Jubilee administration that is looting any resources or diverting any public monies to finance the election, but individual politicians could be doing so with a view to finance their individual campaigns in the 2017 race. You will remember that the leader of the Jubilee government, that is His Excellency the President, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, has not been mentioned in any of these scandals as having received money or influenced any tender or anything of that sort. But here we have individuals who happen to be in the Jubilee administration being accused of corruption to finance their own campaigns or for their own benefit. So yes, there's a possibility that individuals are doing it, but you cannot blanketly condemn the entire Jubilee administration.
So we're saying this is an individual situation. It has nothing to do, because we've seen leaders come out and say, you know, the people who have been implicated in the NYS fraud case should carry their own cross. So are we saying that the Jubilee coalition is not entirely corrupt? It's just some individuals who are corrupt?
Absolutely. There are individuals who are corrupt in the Jubilee administration. That is not in doubt. But we cannot state that the entire Jubilee administration is corrupt. There are many, many individuals in the Jubilee administration who are doing a wonderful job, who have never been mentioned in any corruption scandal whatsoever.
What's your opinion now? We're trying to get now to the truth. Now you're saying that the Jubilee coalition is not entirely corrupt, that it's just some individuals. So you have also mentioned that the president has not been mentioned anywhere.
Correct.
But we are seeing individuals being mentioned. So who is telling the truth amongst the individuals? We've seen Honorable Aden Duale come out. They're just the other day saying he will pursue Anwar Guru, and he was very firm on that.
And take sabbatical leave.
Yeah, and sabbatical leave and come back and do a massacre on dealing with her. He's very firm on his stand, and also Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen is also very firm. The former devolution CS Anwar Guru is also very firm. Josephine Irungu has also come out and said, you know, this is what happened. So I think there's a very, pronounced question in regards to who exactly is telling the truth. So what is your opinion? Who do you think is telling the truth?
Well, from a personal point of view, and looking at the affidavits in particular that have been filed in court, I personally would believe that Josephine Kafura is telling the truth to a great extent.
Why?
The reason is she has provided a lot of details about how companies were formed, about visiting Honorable Anwar Guru's house, about accessing bank accounts and talking to specific managers at a bank at the Central Business District of Nairobi, and even how money was carried in gunny bags into the basement of a bank. You know, I do not think she could be guessing the name of Anwar Guru's hairdresser or guessing the name of Anwar Guru's house help in the house. It is not possible for a Kenyan outside here to know the name of Anwar Guru's house help. I don't think so. So there could be some truth in Josephine's affidavit.
Well, thank you so much, Jared, for coming.
Thank
I
you very
appreciate
much
your
for having
time.
me.
Of course, you have been watching Politically Correct, and the questions we have raised here are basically corruption related, from the NYS to the Eurobond to issues of voter registration. And that was Jared Sala, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, just giving us a little bit of, information. Let me say a lot of information in regard to the NYS scandal and many other issues we have addressed. Of course, what is coming out strongly is, questions about who is telling the truth, where does the truth lie, and we hope we have been able to answer all those questions, Jared, that many Kenyans have. Remember, you can continue sending in your views and comments on the number 0774 455 111. That's 0774 455 111. Thank you so much for joining us. Just make sure you do join us next week for yet another edition of Politically Correct. My name is Leangari, and do enjoy the rest of your viewing here on TVC.